Once you have a base layer of paint all over your eye, and critically, the paper is totally dry, there's no remaining water or moisture in the paper whatsoever, we're going to clean up our drawing and make it look even better by adding finishing touches with watercolor colored pencil. Two reasons we're using watercolored pencil. Reason number one, the color payout in these pencils is better. The inside of it is made slightly differently than regular colored pencil. And reason number two, it gives us options. If we want to smooth and soften lines as we go with a brush that is barely wet with water, that's another thing that we can do with watercolored pencils that we can't with regular colored pencils. When I'm using the watercolor pencil, my goal is really just to think about making the scales look even more interesting, or the inside part of my eye. So even going in and adding a little individual shadow to each of these scales with maybe one or more than one color is going to really help make my artwork stand out when I do that all over. You can choose if you want to go with the similar colors that you've already been using. So here I'm using a color that very closely matches my color of paint. Or you could do something that's really different on top. If you're choosing a color that's very contrasting, that would look very different, you will probably not want to blend it with water, because in that scenario, if you blend it with water, it's more likely to become muddy. When you mix colors that are across from each other on the color wheel, you're more likely to make brown. This is one idea that you could consider working on with your scales. Another thing you could do on the inside of the eye are add lines to really make the eye pop even more. Perhaps to make my eye look more interesting and more 3D, I'm going to start to add some of those almost spidery lines to really show the texture of the tiny little muscles in our eye. Our eyes have little tiny muscles. That's how the light gets in and they start to sort of process and filter the world. I'm sort of thinking about the lines radiating out because the eye is a sphere on the inside. And then you can really think about how you want your artwork to look. I would say if you're not sure about an idea, you can always get a spare piece of paper to test out the idea before you commit to it. And these steps with the colored pencil are really more about thinking about refining and adding detail. So you are the artist. You get to choose how you want your artwork to be looking. If you feel like one of these steps is not what you want for your artwork, it's not a step that you have to take. So after I made those lines to give me a kind of guideline to where to go, I'm just coming in and making these U shapes. I'm looking at a photo that I'll put up on the large screen as sort of an inspiration for thinking about how some of these shapes might be looking within the eye structure. And they can either go all the way to the edge or they can get lighter. Once I have some of these U shapes all the way around the outside, I think I'm going to make them go the opposite way, kind of on the inside, but then get a little bit lighter as they go towards the iris in the center here. So the other way would look like this. Looks kind of like a bobby pin maybe. And I'll do that all the way around. In addition to the U shape, I'm also just filling in with little kind of dashed lines that point towards the middle also. My opinion is that this makes the eye look even more captivating, and you can choose even if you want to add detail to just some of the scales, just for variety and effect, or if you want to add detail to all of the scales. So for example, I think I'm going to make this scale a little bit darker on the edges. And then I'm going to burnish and blend with another color. Actually, more I'm blending than burnishing. I'm really not burnishing so much. But that's making that scale look more three-dimensional, more interesting, and I could do that for as many other scales as I want. I'm so excited to see how much you can get done on your artwork.